be consistent without being too salesy and annoying. Find out on this episode of Authentic Selling TV. All right, full disclosure, Prada and Pecan are not having it. They are done with me filming. They are like, I need to be in the room where it happens. In the room where it happens, the room where it happens. So I let them in. They're like walking around. They're literally growling at the door. So we're going to try this here and we're just going to roll with it. So how to be consistent without being too salesy? This is such a great question because nobody wants to be annoying and nobody wants to be too salesy and nobody wants to be the person where you're like, oh my gosh, leave me alone. They won't leave me alone. But you have heard me talk about the importance of being consistent and the importance of quantity, the importance of showing up regularly. And so it really doesn't matter if you're in an online business or if you're in a corporate job, being consistent without being annoying or too salesy is a fine line. It's a little bit like walking a tightrope backwards in high heel shoes. But I'm gonna give you some very tactical, practical tricks to be able to check in on a prospect, to be able to keep that engagement moving forward. So let's go back to the basics. Let's go back to the 3 steps that every sales plan needs to have, right? Number 1, they got to know you exist. Number 2, they've got to engage with you. I call this disrupting the scroll. They've got to know, oh yeah, want to know more from this person. Number 3, you've got to know how to close the call. So we talk about one of the ways that we talk about how to know your business exists is through having quality and quantity content. But the question always comes up, how much is too much, right? How do we do this consistency thing, whether you're corporate or whether you're online, without being too salesy, without being too aggressive? I want to acknowledge right here that there are plenty of people that will say you cannot be too aggressive. There are plenty of sales experts who will say, do it anyway. This is just part of selling. My problem with that is if it doesn't feel good, it's hard to do. If you're always in the back of your mind thinking, am I being annoying? I don't know what to do. I'm so worried. That doesn't feel good. And I want for you, and I always say it doesn't matter what I want, but I want for you to change your relationship with selling so you can spring into sales with confidence and knowing that what you're doing is actually designed to move the conversation along and help people. So in those 3 steps 1, 2, 3, I'm going to simplify them: prospecting, engagement, close. Know you exist, basically engage with you and close the sale. The overarching energy for that is I am starting a conversation and moving the conversation along. It's not a question of, I got to close right here, right now. One of the things people say to me all the time is it's really fascinating when I learned the authentic selling framework for sales calls, because I don't teach that you have to get a yes on the call. I want people to feel safe. And here's the thing, getting a yes on the call may work, but I don't want people coming back and saying, ooh, I regret doing that. So I just created a whole new way that is incredibly effective of giving people the space. Lots of sales experts say they know in that minute after the presentation if they're a yes or a no. Fine, may be true, but I'm a good enough salesperson, and you will be a good enough salesperson using the tools that I teach to give people that space so you don't feel aggressive. I just closed a sale yesterday, and I ended the call with, take some time, think about it. I'm going to check in, whatever comes up for you, let's discuss it, we'll work it out. Rather than, no, I need to know right this second. There's an addendum to this or something else to be aware of. You can't give people who are fence sitters 4 weeks. I mean, you just can't. That will drive you up a wall. They're then in their own mind of, should I, shouldn't I? That's not helpful. But giving people 24, 48 hours, great. I understand you might need to think about it. I understand you might need to look at your financial situation. And so be the person that you would want to do business with, right? So general common sense applies here when we're looking at all of these steps as far as we are moving the conversation along. So right now we're talking about that step 2 of selling. So they already know your business exists. And how do we get them from, oh yeah, Kendrick runs this business, or that really hick sounding redhead is always talking about selling, so I think she teaches people to sell. How do we move them into more awareness about your business, about what you do, create some engagement, and without being in their face and annoying? So there are a couple of very easy ways to do that. One is, and this is for the online world, obviously your social media feed, if you do social media, can do that. That way, when someone picks up their phone and they're scrolling through Instagram or Facebook or TikTok or YouTube, and they're like, oh yeah, here's a video, here's a reel, here's a something, I'm gonna watch it, right? So that's one way, by constantly having new, fresh content. That's number one. Number two is by putting something in their hands. So there is a statistic that says when you're selling face-to-face or you're selling corporate, to leave something in their hands, whether it's your business card, whether it's a PDF, whether it's a brochure, leave something in their hands. And that is proven to increase sales. I don't know why. I guess because it's always top of mind. I mean, it makes sense with this whole consistency thing we're talking about. But in the online world, you're not physically touching people, right? That sounded weird. But you're not physically in the same room with people. And so how do you put something in their hand? One way is with your opt-in. You know, one of the steps can be print this out, keep it at your computer, jot down any questions you have, and email me. Or jot down any questions you have and DM me on Instagram. Like physically putting something in their hand so that, tell them to keep it by the desk. Oh yeah, I've got this incredible opt-in. I've got this opt-in I need to do by that redhead that sounds like a hick. I'm gonna do this real quick. So that's one way, giving them something to remember you by and telling them to keep it in their workspace. Another way is by asking open-ended questions. So questions, most sales experts will agree, questions are a salesperson's greatest asset. But people do questions so poorly. So if you don't know, I'm assuming you do, but just so we're all on the same page, a close-ended question is a question that can be answered with yes, no, maybe, really quick. An open-ended question is something that requires more than yes, no, maybe. So asking open-ended questions. A great way to do this on social media would be, let me think for just a minute. The 5 regrets of the dying, according to a palliative care nurse, are: number 1, I wish I'd had the courage to live my life more fully. Number 2, I wish I'd spent less time working. Number 3, I wish I'd had the courage to follow my dreams. I'm not sure these are exactly right, but they're close enough, okay? So let's just use the 3 regrets of the dying. Okay, and then you ask a question, which number are you most worried about? Put it in the comments. Well, that's a close-ended question because they just have to put a number. But then once they have that number, right? So somebody goes in on social media and comments, I'm a number 1 or I'm a number 2. You can ask open-ended questions about that to start a conversation. And before you think this won't work, I actually saw this work with a business owner she's an incredible human. She's a world famous artist, and she also teaches artists how to have their own business, how to get featured in galleries, how to make money from their work. And we crafted this post. You know, these are I don't remember what it was, but these are the 6 mentalities of the starving artist mentality, according to Google, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Which one do you identify most with as an artist? People put their number in. Then we followed up either in the DMs or on social media by asking open-ended questions and starting a conversation. What we did not do was move straight to the sell. And a lot of people are teaching you the minute you get engagement, tell them how you can help them. Yeah, that's not how this works. I want you to think of this a little bit like you go out on a first date and you're a little bit unsure, like, will there be a second date? I don't know. And the person you're on the date with is like, oh my God, I love you. Will you marry me? It's like, whoa, can we take a beat for a hot second? Breathe. We want to be in that breathe space, right? We don't want to come across as too aggressive, too eager, too annoying. And the same is true for corporate sales reps. So it depends on what kind of corporate sales rep you are. But let's say that you are a corporate sales rep, that you have a book of business or a route, and you're calling on people once a week, once a month, whatever. Your job is not to close the sale in one call. Your job is to get one piece of information that you didn't know before you walked in. Think about this for a minute. So let's play this out. I'm gonna actually give you an example. So let's say I'm gonna use my past examples because they're easy and they're true. So most of you know I used to sell drugs, the legal kind. I was a pharmaceutical sales rep. At some point I got hired, right? And then I had to go meet all of these new doctors and all of these new nurses and all of these new MAs and all, MAs, medical assistants, and all of these new gatekeepers at the front. I was coming into their territory. The last thing they needed was some 20-something-year-old rep bouncing into their office thinking I knew everything and I was going to teach them something. I had the solution they were looking for. If you're an online business, pay attention. You may think this is all about corporate and this doesn't apply to me, and you are wrong. So stick with me. So the last thing in this analogy, or this is actually true, they needed was me coming in and saying, hey, I'm your new ex-rep and I'm going to make all your patients feel amazing. You need to write this every time you see blah, 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 blah. No, like that's arrogant. That is disrespectful. I'm going into their house or their business. I don't need to tell them what they need to do, even if I'm right, y'all. Even if I know what they're writing for their type 2 diabetics is outdated, that the science doesn't support that anymore. You're not going to get very far by telling people they're wrong. People don't like that, okay? So I have to go in and introduce myself and make a home for myself in this office. So usually the first thing I would do is I'd walk in, I'd introduce myself to the gatekeeper. That's whoever's checking people in, and say, hey, I know you see a lot of reps. I'm going to keep this super quick. I'm Kendrick. I'm your new blah, blah, blah rep. I'm just trying to get the lay of the land so I don't mess up how you run this office or how this office is run. Can you tell me what's your policy for seeing reps? Am I able to schedule some time with the doctor? I've got some new information. I want to make sure I take care of you first. Okay? I left with that information. I did not see a doctor unless they needed samples. Oh, great. We need some, Forteo samples. Okay, great. Then I would have to see a doctor. But I left with information that I didn't have before. And I left with the rules. This is how we like for people to come into our house and behave. Now, you may not like the rules. The rules may be our doctor doesn't see reps. And you're like, well, mother flip, I've got to see this doctor. That's a different conversation for a different video about how to get back when there's no access. Again, online world, stick with me. So let's assume that in this situation, they gave me, great, we only see reps at lunch. We're booked for the next 7 months. That's a problem also, right? Because now they know I exist, but they don't have room to see me for 7 freaking months. What am I going to do? So we need to move from step 1, knowing you exist, to step 2, engaging. So there are different ways to do this. If they're not seeing you for 7 months, then we need to, one strategy is to use the psychology of persuasion and befriend the gatekeeper. Befriend the gatekeeper. Get to know the gatekeeper. So the next time you go in, you might say, look, I know you only see reps at lunch. I just need to check and make sure you have samples for your patients for the next 6 months or 7 months until you can see me. What's the best way to do that? And also, how can I make your job easier? How can maybe I brought you a coffee, maybe whatever. So ask about the person, get to know them. Again, your goal is to leave with a piece of information that you did not have before. Eventually, you're going to get past that gatekeeper. And we'll do a video later about how to get past the gatekeeper because there's some strategies for that. But friendship is one of those. So eventually, you're going to get past the gatekeeper. Now you're meeting the doctor for the first time. Doctor, doctor, give me the news. I got a bad case, loving you. You're meeting the physician, the person who actually, again, in this analogy, has the power to write your script. I'm not going to go in my first meeting with a doctor and say, hey, you need to write this for all your patients. Or did you know that 80% of people who have type 2 diabetes die of cardiovascular disease? I'm not going to do that because, yeah, the doctor knows that, y'all. So my goal is to leave with one piece of information that I didn't have before. So, hey, Dr. such and such, I'm Kendrick. I'm your new whatever rep. I have so much respect for what you do in this office. I'm going to keep this super short and super sweet. 2 questions for you super quick. Do you need blah, blah, blah samples? And when you see a patient who is type 2 diabetic, who has failed metformin, what do you currently do? Great. Thank you so much. Sign here for samples. Here's my card. I'm leaving them something. If you need anything, please let me know. Is there anyone else in this office that handles callbacks that I should meet or anything like that? I've gotten a lot of information here, y'all. I know what they do when they see my patient. I know who handles callbacks. If you don't know what a callback is, it doesn't matter. I'm going to go meet them and start with them. So now you can build the next time that you go into that office. Dr. such and such. I know that you told me that when you see, type 2 diabetics who have failed metformin, you start them on product X. Have you ever tried, insert your product name, what's your experience with it? Well, I hate it. My patients can't afford it. Right there, you have the problem. Right there, my patients can't afford it, right? So you know why the doctor's not writing your product. I gotta tell you, if the doctor's patients are saying they can't afford your product or service, you can try to close the call right there. So you can move into closing. Dr. such and such, thank you so much for sharing that with me. I understand. Let me ask you this. If I'm able to get samples for your patients who can't afford it, are you willing to give this another try? Are you willing to write it? So when they call Kendrick back in the who handles callbacks, she can give them samples. Are you willing to give it a try? Right there, that question tells you, do they believe in your product? Or would they just, because if they say no, then the reason they're not writing is not because they can't afford it. There's another reason. Okay, we're getting into the weeds here. The point is, every time you try to move the conversation along, and when you're calling on people face to face, you may have multiple conversations that you're trying to move along, right? The gatekeeper, the doctor, the nurse who handles callback, the insurance people, like you're kind of calling on the whole office. And you can build on that every single time. So, we're using common sense. We're asking open-ended questions that require at least 5 seconds of communication, right? 5 seconds is a made-up rule, but that requires something besides yes, no, maybe. That then allows you to build on the conversation. Now, one other thing to point out there before I transition this into the online world is notice when the doctor gave me a reason that they're not writing my product. I immediately went for the close. If I could, this is called the agreement close. If I can solve this problem, if you legitimately think this is the best product for your, type 2 diabetics who have failed metformin, this is no disrespect to metformin, I'm just jiving here. If I can get them free drugs, will you write it again? Right? I immediately went for the agreement close. And the agreement close is going to say, yeah, I'll absolutely write it. That's incredible. Or no, there's another problem with the product that we then get to uncover. And I wouldn't deal with that. So if he's like, no, actually, I had some people whose A1Cs went too low when I tried that. Oh, okay, great. Thank you for sharing that with me. I understand. I love how invested in your patient's diabetic health you are. I appreciate the value of your time. I'll do some research on that and follow back up with you. Right? We literally sometimes had 30 seconds with a physician. So again, we're moving them through this sort of matrix. Step 1, know your business exists. Step 2, engagement. And with engagement, the goal is to move the conversation along. Now, I said one more thing. I was wrong. One more thing. There will be times when you're calling face-to-face when they're like, the doctor is super behind. Even if you've had this great conversation, they can't see you today. Totally understand. Look, I get it. Would you leave this for them? Is there somewhere I can put this information, right? So you leave a pamphlet, you leave a something. And that right there is going to translate into the online world. Because leaving something or constantly being in front of your customer is what we do on social media. Think of it as, oh, I'm too busy right now to talk to you. I'm not ready to talk to you. Okay, great. I'm just going to leave this here for you. Do they read it? Maybe. Likely they don't. But you're still top of mind. Now, the good news for this is, how easy is it to leave a pamphlet? How easy is it, not incredibly, but how easy is it to constantly, that's not the right word, to consistently post on social? It's hard to consistently post on social when you feel like you're hearing crickets, right? But if you know this is the equivalent of, oh, yeah, I'm here, I'm open for business. When you're ready, I'm here. Then you are doing part of your job and you're not being annoying because you're doing it on their terms. You're not saying you got to read this now. You got to engage with this now. You're saying it's here when you're ready. All right, so online world. How do we transition from all this prospecting that we do to getting into engagement without being annoying? Well, one of those is asking open-ended questions on social media. Another way is to give something really, really targeted away for free. So webinars are a great example of this. And we have this whole, inside of Sales Prep School, this whole module on how to give a webinar without giving too much away for free. And that ups the investment in you and your business, not the financial investment, but the time investment. If I am going to attend a webinar, I either see you as an expert, I want to know what you're doing, or I want to learn from you, right? Like, I'm not going to give you my time, my most precious resource, by showing up to your webinar. When you're new and you spend all this time making a webinar and 3 people show up and you're discouraged, I'm going to give you a little bit of sweet as pie but tough as nails truth right here. I get it. I understand. You wanted thousands. And 3 people said, I see you as an expert. 3 people said, I'm going to give you my most precious asset, my free time, to learn from you. Your job right there is not to be discouraged, not to go all sulky. Your job is to deliver a kick-ass webinar. Deliver it. Word will spread. The next one will have more. So in the online world, we have tools to move the conversation along. Another tool is the love follow-up. So let's say that you've moved somebody through these 3 steps, okay? And we've closed, and then they're sort of on the fence, and they're like, yeah, no, not right now. You can check back in 3 months later. Hey, Kendrick, you crossed my mind today. I know the last time we talked, you were really putting an effort on closing more sales and reaching 10K months. How is that going? Fill me in, let me know. I didn't say anything about my product. I am re-engaging the conversation. Another way that we can do this is through our autoresponder sequence. Don't miss this. Autoresponders and opt-ins and autoresponder sequences are a little bit like check the box, one and done. But if you do your autoresponder sequence right, no, you're not going to have 5,000 people respond. But you are engaging. If they're opening, they're reading, they're reading, they're reading, here's a good call to action. So all of these things that you've learned to do in the online world that you're like, are they outdated? Do they work? Here is the why behind those. Here's why you do that. And I believe understanding the why makes it click. It makes it make so, oh, I'm not just throwing spaghetti at the wall. These are proven ways to engage people, to move people from step 1 to step 2, And then eventually we make our offer and we learn how to have a sales call and close them. So, the overarching energy rule of thumb here is, how would you want to be followed up with? And you may think, ew, I wouldn't. Okay, that's the wrong answer. So let's assume that somebody's going to follow up, right? Someone's going to engage. Someone's going to try to keep the conversation moving forward. I would want them to seem genuinely interested in my success. I would want them to genuinely be sharing something that I think can move me forward in my life and my business. Maybe it's a resource, maybe it's a book, maybe it's offer to hop on a mini session, but I would want them to seem genuinely interested in my success rather than their own. That's a key for engagement. This is messed up in the online world because it's taught wrong all day long. And it's also taught wrong in some corporate sales schools. They expect you to go in, start detailing, which is selling. It's just a word because we don't like the word selling. I have so much to say about that, but I won't. Start detailing immediately, close that sale, and those people are the first people to get kicked out of offices. Those people in the online world are the first people you unfollow. Anytime somebody is teaching you to cold pitch somebody in DMs, you better be really careful. You got to be really careful there. I'm not saying it won't work, but I'm telling you to be careful and ask yourself, if I'm going to pitch somebody in the DMs, how would I want somebody to pitch me? Because this whole, hey, your content's incredible. Do you want to make an extra $10,000 a month? No. Hey, your content's incredible. Are you ready to launch your first course? No, I did that 12 years ago. Common sense applies here, y'all. And think about this. If you were having a conversation with someone, let's say you're out with your best good friend and you're having a conversation and you've just like verbally told them the biggest thing going on in your life that you're struggling with. I have no time. My kid always needs me. My husband always needs me. I haven't had a massage. I haven't even had a shower where somebody didn't need something while I was in the shower in 4 years. And then your best good friend says, well, maybe you should try like spending a little extra time in the shower. Did you listen to what I was saying? Right? Use some common sense. So the engagement piece is hard because you've got to think, how would I want to be dealt with? What is one open-ended question that I can use to move this conversation along? And remember, along as we stumble along through life's crowded dance floor, drowsy chaperone. And remember, your goal is to get a piece of the puzzle, a piece of information so that you can build on that moving forward. Speaking of building on things moving forward, to get the rest of this, to get how the heck do we close people, make sure you ring the bell. Ring that bell. Ring that bell. And I believe in you and I believe in your business. Bye, y'all.